In 2022, Robert Johnson of Phoenix, Arizona, lost his entire retirement fund of $437,000 to what seemed like a legitimate investment opportunity. After 40 years of careful saving, it vanished in just 3 weeks. What made this 68-year-old retired engineer, known for his meticulous attention to detail, fall prey to such a scheme? The painful truth is that Robert trusted too easily and failed to apply strategic thinking to his financial decisions. How many of us are making the same mistakes right now without even realizing it? The financial landscape has become increasingly treacherous for seniors, with targeted scams increasing by 47% in the last 5 years alone. Yet the most dangerous threat isn't always external. It is our own outdated approach to financial security. Classic strategic thinkers understood something that modern financial advisors rarely discuss. Power and security come not just from accumulating wealth, but from strategically protecting it. While traditional financial advice focuses primarily on growth and optimism, the wisest strategists throughout history have balanced opportunity with protection. They recognize that maintaining control over your resources requires both offensive and defensive tactics. This balanced approach is what I call strategic financial protection, and it is what separates those who merely accumulate wealth from those who truly secure it. Consider Thomas Anderson from Raleigh, who maintained his financial independence even through the 2008 financial crisis, while his neighbors lost everything. The difference wasn't luck. It was strategic thinking. Thomas applied the principle of financial autonomy as the basis of security, ensuring that his assets were positioned to withstand systemic shocks rather than maximize short-term gains. The first strategic principle we must understand is the balance between respect and affability in financial relationships. Traditional advisors suggest building friendly relationships with financial professionals, but strategic thinkers understand that excessive familiarity can undermine your position. Financial relationships should be founded on professional respect rather than personal connection. When Patricia Garcia of Tampa allowed her friendly relationship with her financial advisor to substitute for proper oversight, she stopped questioning his increasingly risky investment choices until she had lost $94,000. The second crucial principle involves practical means for necessary ends. While conventional wisdom encourages strict adherence to financial idealism, strategic thinkers recognize that protecting your assets sometimes requires pragmatic compromises. This doesn't mean acting unethically, but rather understanding that rigid idealism can leave you vulnerable. When William Chen of Boston refused to adjust his investment strategy during market volatility because of his commitment to a particular financial philosophy, he sacrificed 31% of his retirement savings that could have been protected. The third principle focuses on strategic adaptability in financial agreements. The ability to change course when circumstances shift is not inconsistency, it is intelligent adaptation. Margaret Baker of Denver maintained her wealth through 3 decades of economic upheaval by refusing to treat any financial strategy as permanent. She understood that what works today might become dangerous tomorrow and adjusted accordingly without emotional attachment to past decisions. These principles might seem contrary to conventional financial wisdom, which often emphasizes trust, consistency, and long-term commitment. However, strategic thinkers throughout history have recognized that financial security requires a more nuanced approach. The most successful individuals protect their interest first, adapt to changing circumstances without hesitation, and maintain a healthy skepticism about financial relationships. This approach isn't about cynicism. It is about empowerment. By applying strategic thinking to your finances, you position yourself to maintain control rather than surrender it to institutions, advisors, or family members who may not prioritize your interests as highly as you do. True financial security comes from this position of strength and strategic awareness. In our next section, we'll explore practical protection strategies that apply these principles to your everyday financial decisions, including specific techniques for safeguarding your assets against both external threats and well-intentioned but potentially harmful advice from those close to you. Let us continue our exploration of strategic financial thinking by examining specific protection strategies. As we discussed in our previous section, the principles of strategic autonomy, practical means, and adaptability form the foundation of financial security. Now, we need to translate these concepts into actionable tactics that you can implement immediately to safeguard your assets. The first practical strategy involves strategic compartmentalization of your assets. Traditional financial advice often focuses on consolidation for convenience, but strategic thinkers understand that distributing assets across multiple institutions creates critical protection. By dividing your wealth among different accounts, investment vehicles, and even institutions, you create a system where a single point of failure cannot compromise your entire financial position. Elizabeth Kim of Seattle implemented this strategy by maintaining relationships with 3 separate financial institutions, which protected her when one advisor began making increasingly risky investments with client funds. The second protection strategy centers on information control. In financial matters, information asymmetry determines who holds power. While conventional wisdom encourages complete transparency with financial advisors, strategic thinkers understand the importance of selective disclosure. This doesn't mean being dishonest. It means thoughtfully considering what information you share and with whom. When James Wilson of Nashville revealed his complete financial situation to his advisor, including his urgent need for funds, he consistently received less favorable terms than when he later adopted a more measured approach to information sharing. Implementing verification systems represents our third crucial strategy. Strategic thinkers never rely solely on trust. They create systems to verify that their interests are being protected. This includes regular independent audits of your financial relationships, secondary opinions on major decisions, and consistent monitoring of account activities. Susan Williams of Minneapolis avoided a potential $127,000 loss when her verification system flagged unusual investment patterns in her retirement account, revealing that her trusted advisor of 7 years had begun taking increasingly inappropriate risks with client funds. The fourth protection strategy involves maintaining strategic reserves outside your primary investment channels. While financial optimists often push for full investment to maximize returns, strategic thinkers understand the value of maintaining liquid reserves that aren't tied to market performance or subject to institutional control. These reserves provide both protection against market volatility and negotiating leverage with financial institutions. David Martinez of Cleveland maintained a cash reserve equal to 18 months of living expenses, which not only protected him during the 2020 economic disruption, but also gave him the freedom to decline disadvantageous financial proposals. Strategic redundancy serves as our fifth protection mechanism. Beyond diversification of investments, this involves creating backup systems for every critical financial function. This includes secondary banking relationships, alternative income streams, and backup advisors who understand your situation. Linda Jackson of Denver discovered the value of this approach when her primary bank froze her accounts due to a security algorithm error, but her pre-established relationship with a secondary institution allowed her to maintain financial operations without disruption. The sixth strategy focuses on documentation and paper trails. Strategic thinkers understand that verbal agreements and assurances provide little protection when problems arise. Every significant financial action should be documented, with records maintained independently from the institutions involved. This documentation serves not just as protection against fraud, but as leverage in disputes and negotiations. Richard Taylor of Portland recovered $83,000 in mismanaged investments because he had maintained detailed records of all communications with his advisor, establishing a pattern that contradicted the firm AS claims. The final practical protection strategy involves regular stress testing of your financial position. Rather than assuming stability, strategic thinkers actively imagine and prepare for potential threats. This involves regularly assessing how your financial position would withstand various scenarios, from market crashes to health emergencies to changes in tax law. Barbara Nelson of St. Louis implemented quarterly financial stress tests with her independent advisor, which helped her identify and address 5 critical vulnerabilities in her retirement plan before they could be exploited by changing market conditions. These protection strategies may seem excessively cautious to those accustomed to optimistic financial planning. However, historical strategic thinkers recognize that protection must precede growth, because wealth that cannot be defended will eventually be lost. By implementing these practical strategies, you position yourself to maintain control over your financial future, regardless of external circumstances. In our next section, we'll explore how to effectively manage financial relationships with family members, advisors, and institutions to maintain autonomy while maximizing beneficial connections. Building on our protection strategies from the previous section, we now turn to the critical aspect of financial relationship management. The way you structure and maintain relationships with family members, financial professionals, and institutions determines whether these connections strengthen or undermine your financial security. Strategic relationship management requires balancing interpersonal dynamics with pragmatic protection of your interests. Let us begin with family financial relationships, often the most emotionally complex. Traditional advice emphasizes unconditional financial trust within families, but strategic thinkers recognize that family dynamics can pose unique threats to financial security. This doesn't mean approaching family with suspicion, but rather establishing clear boundaries and systems that protect everyone involved. Jennifer Lewis of Austin implemented formal documentation for family loans and gifts exceeding $5,000, which prevented misunderstandings when her son's business venture failed and preserved both her assets and their relationship. The concept of strategic distance proves valuable in family financial matters. While emotional closeness is important, financial boundaries protect both parties. Mary Patel of Detroit established a policy of never making financial decisions during family gatherings or emotional situations, instead deferring all discussions to scheduled meetings where emotions could be separated from financial realities. This simple practice prevented her from making several financially damaging decisions that she would have later regretted. When managing relationships with financial professionals, the principle of controlled engagement becomes essential. Strategic thinkers understand that while advisors provide valuable expertise, surrendering control creates vulnerability. Joseph Rodriguez of San Diego implemented a 3-tier approach to advisor relationships, providing complete information access only to matters directly under their management, requiring explanation of recommendations in clear language, and maintaining independent verification of all performance claims. This structured approach allowed him to benefit from professional expertise while maintaining ultimate control. The strategy of competitive tension can dramatically improve professional financial relationships. While many advisors prefer exclusive relationships, maintaining relationships with multiple professionals creates accountability and leverage. Carol Martinez of Atlanta retained relationships with 2 separate advisory firms, regularly comparing their recommendations and performance. This approach not only improved the quality of advice she received, but also resulted in significantly reduced fees from both institutions eager to maintain her business. For institutional relationships, strategic indispensability provides powerful protection. Financial institutions prioritize valuable clients during challenging times. Rather than simply maintaining minimum balances, strategic thinkers position themselves as profitable, low-maintenance clients through consistent behavior and strategic consolidation of appropriate services. Kenneth Davis of Boston maintained his preferred banking terms even during the 2008 financial crisis by strategically concentrating his mortgage, credit cards, and investment accounts with one institution while maintaining emergency alternatives elsewhere. The concept of strategic formality applies across all financial relationships. While casual interaction builds rapport, formality creates record and accountability. Edward Sullivan of Minneapolis discovered this distinction when his verbally promised interest rate was misremembered by his longtime banker. After that experience, he implemented a policy of immediate written confirmation following verbal discussions, which prevented similar situations from recurring and actually improved the professionalism of services he received. Throughout all financial relationships, The principle of reciprocal value should guide your approach. Strategic thinkers recognize that sustainable relationships require mutual benefit. Rather than approaching financial relationships as either purely transactional or blindly trusting, they create situations where all parties are incentivized to maintain the relationship through ongoing value exchange. Donna Phillips of Denver structured her banking relationship so that her business accounts provided value to the institution, while their wealth management services provided expertise she needed, creating a balanced partnership rather than a lopsided power dynamic. The final relationship management strategy involves regular reassessment of all financial connections. Strategic thinkers avoid relationship inertia by scheduling periodic reviews of whether each financial relationship continues to serve their interests. Ruth Hernandez of Tampa implemented annual relationship reviews for every financial connection, which led her to replace an underperforming investment advisor she had maintained for years out of habit rather than results. By applying these strategic principles to your financial relationships, you transform potential vulnerabilities into sources of strength. Rather than hoping that others will prioritize your interests, you create structures that align their incentives with your financial security. In our next section, we'll explore how to integrate these protection strategies and relationship management techniques into a comprehensive system that provides lasting financial security while adapting to changing circumstances. Having explored both protection strategies and relationship management techniques, we now turn to the critical task of integration. The true power of strategic financial thinking emerges not from isolated tactics, but from a comprehensive system that coordinates these approaches. This integration transforms individual strategies into a resilient financial fortress that can withstand both targeted threats and systemic disruptions. The foundation of your integrated financial system begins with strategic sequencing. While conventional advice often suggests implementing financial strategies simultaneously, strategic thinkers understand that proper sequence multiplies effectiveness. Protection must precede growth, relationship boundaries must precede engagement, and information control must precede disclosure. When Frank Peterson of Atlanta reversed this sequence by pursuing aggressive growth before establishing protection mechanisms, he exposed himself to preventable losses that proper sequencing would have avoided. The second integration principle involves establishing governance rules for your financial system. These are personal policies that guide decisions across all aspects of your finances. Strategic thinkers create clear rules about matters like emergency fund size, debt limits, decision timeframes, and information sharing. These rules function as decision shortcuts during stressful situations when emotional thinking might otherwise prevail. Sarah Cohen of Minneapolis credited her personal financial constitution with preventing panic selling during market volatility, as her pre-established rules required specific conditions before portfolio changes could be implemented. Strategic layering represents the third integration concept. This involves organizing your financial structures in concentric layers of protection, with assets requiring the highest security placed behind multiple protective barriers. Helen Campbell of Boston structured her finances in 4 distinct layers, with daily operating accounts at the outermost layer, and her most significant long-term assets protected behind multiple verification requirements, institutional separations, and documentation systems. This layering meant that even when her identity was compromised, the perpetrators gained access only to limited resources before detection. The integration of timing awareness into your financial system provides critical advantages. Strategic thinkers recognize that financial timing involves not just market cycles, but personal, relational, and institutional cycles as well. By mapping these intersecting timelines, you can identify both vulnerability points and opportunity windows. Deborah Scott of Portland aligned her major financial moves to correspond with her peak cognitive energy periods and institutional review cycles, resulting in consistently better terms and more favorable outcomes than her previous approach of addressing financial matters whenever they arose. The fifth integration principle focuses on response protocols for different categories of financial threats. Rather than reacting individually to each situation, strategic thinkers develop standardized responses to common threat categories. This preparation prevents paralysis and reduces response time when threats emerge. Nancy Foster of Denver credited her pre-established response protocols with limiting her losses to just $3,200 when her accounts showed suspicious activity, compared to her neighbor who lost over $47,000 to a similar attack but lacked clear response procedures. The final integration element involves regular system maintenance through scheduled reviews and updates. The most sophisticated financial strategy becomes vulnerable when it fails to adapt to changing conditions. Strategic thinkers establish regular maintenance cycles for each aspect of their financial system, ensuring that protection remains relevant against evolving threats. George Washington of San Diego implemented quarterly protection reviews and annual system overhauls, which identified and addressed 17 significant vulnerabilities over 5 years before they could be exploited. This integrated approach to financial security represents a fundamental shift from conventional wisdom. Rather than focusing primarily on growth and returns, it prioritizes control, protection, and strategic positioning. The result isn't just preservation of assets, but the creation of true financial autonomy that can withstand both expected and unexpected challenges. If the concepts in this series have resonated with you, I encourage you to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more strategic insights. The principles we've discussed aren't just theoretical. They represent practical wisdom that has protected wealth through centuries of economic turbulence. By applying these strategies to your own finances, you position yourself among those rare individuals who maintain true financial security regardless of external circumstances. Remember that financial security isn't about paranoia, but strategic empowerment. It is about creating systems that protect what you've worked so hard to build. The time to implement these strategies isn't after problems arise. It is now, while you have the clarity and resources to establish proper protections. Your financial future deserves nothing less than the most strategic approach available. If you've found value in these concepts, please share them with others who might benefit from this strategic perspective on financial security.